Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Speedway High School. I want to thank you all for attending tonight's ceremony as we honor our top 10 students of the class of 2019. This is one of my favorite events of the year as it presents a unique opportunity to honor both students and teachers. Before we begin, I'd like to first thank the Speedway Lions Club for sponsoring this wonderful event, and the ladies of Aramark for providing the delicious meal that we'll be partaking in later. We have some of them in the back. If we could please give those ladies a big round of applause for... I'd also like to thank the esteemed members of our school board. Those that are here, if you could please stand when I announce your name. Board President, Mr. Luke Bickle. Vice President, Ms. Laura DeGay. Board Member, Ms. Deborah Gonzalez. Board Member, Mr. William Harding. And Board Secretary, Mr. Tom Smith. If we could please give our school board a round of applause, please. We certainly appreciate the support they provide for our schools, our staff, and our students. I'd also like to thank our assistant superintendents, Mr. John Disney, Dr. Kyle Trebley, and of course our superintendent, Mr. Ken Hall. Thank you, gentlemen. From the high school, I'd like to recognize our assistant principal, Mr. J.P. Claiborne, our director of student services, Mr. Trenton Borum. From the counseling department, Counselor Mr. Chuck Bennett, and Counselor Miss Misty Davenport. A special thanks to Miss Davenport, as without her hard work and guidance, tonight's program would not be possible. Thank you, Miss Davenport. If you are a parent of tonight's, or one of tonight's top 10 students, would you please stand at this time? I can tell by the looks on your faces, I put you on the spot tonight. You're welcome. I would like to recognize you for the love, support, and guidance that you have given these fine young men and women in helping them achieve such great academic success at one of the most rigorous high schools one can attend. I would now like for the top 10 students to please stand. As you are the reason we are here tonight, I would like to thank you for your hard work, dedication, your willingness to challenge yourself and persevere through those challenges, and your commitment to excellence. We have amazing students here at Speedway High School, which makes their feat of being in the top 10 of their class even more impressive. I can honestly say this group of seniors are leaving the high school a better place than they found it 4 years ago when they began their journey as freshmen. Thank you. I could not be more proud of the accomplishments of each of these students. They are truly an inspiration, not just because of what they have accomplished in the classroom, but because of who they are as people. I am honored to be their principal and proud of the fact that they will forever be representatives of Speedway High School. At this time, I'd like to introduce Miss Elinor Campbell and invite her to come to the podium to deliver our invocation this evening.
Please pray with me. Our Father God, how wonderful are the works of your hands. As we gather here today to celebrate the conclusion of our high school careers, let us not forget that which we are leaving behind. For this school, which has given us a safe place to learn and a strong foundation to build our future endeavors upon, we thank you. For our teachers, who have so richly loved and cared for us through high school's triumphs and travails, we thank you. For our families, who have cheered us on to the finish line and stood by our sides through the many challenges we have faced, we thank you. We thank you for the friendship that we have found amongst our classmates and educators. for all the jokes that we have laughed over, for the hardships we have endured together, and for the relationships we will carry with us beyond these walls, we thank you. In your name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell, for that lovely invocation. Tonight is a night of appreciation. Our appreciation toward those students who truly epitomize what it is to be a spark plug and who have risen to the top of their class. And in turn, their appreciation toward an educator who has helped them along the way. Randy Pausch once said, "Showing gratitude is one of the simplest yet most powerful things humans can do for each other." With that said, I'd like to recognize and invite to the podium our first student, Miss Courtney Merrill. Courtney is number 10 in her class and will be attending Damon University in the fall to major in physical therapy. Her honoree is Mr. Kyle Owens, our Project Lead the Way teacher here at the high school and Courtney's cross-country coach. Welcome, Courtney.
Before I begin, I want to preface by explaining that I have a quote beginning each paragraph from both a movie called Without Limits and a book called Running with the Buffaloes. Without Limits documents the short life of Steve Prefontaine, an extremely famous and speedy runner who sets records in every distance from the 2,000 meters to 10,000 meters. Pre was coached by Bill Bowerman, an equally as famous running coach who co-founded Nike. Running with the Buffaloes follows the 1998 University of Colorado men's cross-country season from late summer practices to the NCAA cross-country championships with star Adam Goucher and coach Mark Wetmore. Of course he wanted to win. Those who saw him compete and those who competed against him were never in any doubt how much he wanted to win. But how he won mattered to him more. Without Limits, Bill Bowerman. Mr. Owens has educated me and impacted me in more ways than school possibly could. It's true, he didn't teach me how to write a quality essay in 35 minutes or the function of enzymes, although he has quizzed me on the amendments of the United States when I mistakenly explained what we learned in government that day. Mr. Owens has never been my teacher, unless you count the morning class called Genius Hour, but through his example, I've been able to accomplish far more, get so much farther in life, and become an overall happier person. I know there are miracles in other sports, but there are no miracles in running. Running with the Buffaloes, Mark Wetmore. Owens continually goes above and beyond. He is extremely observant and inquisitive for the benefit of others, and being the one on the receiving end, I personally know how much it impacts others' lives. I've been an athlete throughout both middle school and high school, which has allowed me to understand why a thoughtful, hardworking coach is imperative for a successful team. For me, high school cross-country has been unique to any other athletic experience. I knew I was passionate about running before I entered high school. Little did I know, my passion and talent was a new challenge Owens felt pressure to correctly develop. Despite whatever nervousness he may have felt, he admirably tackled the challenge and blew my mind with his self-taught running knowledge every day. The practice before track regionals my junior year, Owens asked me, "Do you know why I had you run sprints so much this past season?" I proceeded to go into a long, generic explanation to describe why he would train me in this way, thinking my clever response would be more than accurate and impressive. Once I finished, he paused, and after commenting on the length of my answer, he explained how after looking at how I ran in previous years and at specific races, he was able to develop a training plan geared specifically towards me. I was speechless, which honestly is a pretty impressive feat when it comes to running conversations. Firstly, his simple but intelligent response demonstrated that he spent time studying and understanding my athletic performances. Each new race is a new piece of information he uses to make me better. Secondly, his answer showed me there's always more to learn about something. It taught me not only humility concerning my knowledge, but also taught me to always yearn for more. Everyone has something to teach you. The real purpose of running isn't to win a race. It's to test the limits of the human heart. Without Limits, Bill Bowerman. Since getting to know Owens and witnessing him interact with many people, I have always admired his conversational abilities and strive to develop a similar skill as I get older. Coming into high school my freshman year, I knew pretty much no one on the cross-country team, so not only was I quite frankly a loner, but as a little freshman, I was terribly scared to start high school sports by myself. During the summer before my freshman year, I began a run at a pace much faster than I had ever gone before in an effort to keep up with the speedy guys. But inevitably, all the boys branched off in their own groups, leaving me behind and alone. A few minutes in, I accepted the fact that this practice was going to be a solitary, independent run, and convinced myself that running is an independent sport, so I had to learn to fight on my own. Although I was pleasantly surprised to find Owens run up next to me. Even though I was an immature new freshman, he rapidly began conversation, stating a claim I could quickly disagree with, classic Owens, and thus began the start of many running debates. These frequent but friendly debates between me and Owens have taught me the value of having an opinion and how to stand my ground and not fall under peer pressure. The banner is less than 100 meters away. He knows the race is his. He shakes his fist at the crowd. He knows he's done it. For something to hurt that bad and feel so good, it's just inexplicable. Running with the Buffalo's Adam Goucher. Owens taught me humility and selflessness. No one is the best at everything. He showed me the value of always working harder to push yourself, even though you won't always win. After getting a few seconds away from the school record my second meet into the season, Owens didn't shower me with compliments, brag to everyone about the new freshman girl, or allow me to take control of my training because of my talent. Instead, he threw me into workouts, pushing me to work harder and trust the process. During swim season my junior year, Owens continually told me to run during the winter. Just a few miles each week, it will help you so much during track season. My initial reaction to his nagging was anger. How dare he tell me to run when I practiced for swimming every day until dark and had to get up extra early for his morning class. However, I ran anyway so that every time he threw the "did you run" question at me, I would quickly be able to say yes and avoid the lecture. Throughout track, I found myself easily hitting times I struggled with the previous year and was blessed to avoid the shin splints curse. Was it because I was older and better? No. It was the work I put in during the winter that allowed me to be so much more successful and have a much more enjoyable track season than in the past. It was Owens who showed me the joy of hard work and how much more you can get out of life when you give it everything you have. You can't catch me. You'll never catch me. You don't have the guts. Without limits, Steve Prefontaine. Owens showed me what it was like to push myself to the breaking point, both physically and mentally, how to keep going, and that success will come if you want it enough. Without Owens as my coach, I can confidently and regretfully say that I would have quit cross country and track, content with swimming year-round and running the mini marathon every May. Although Owens not only exemplified to me how to work hard, but how to yearn for success. He taught me that there's nothing in this world I cannot do if I put my mind to it and want it enough. Running, one might say, is basically an absurd pastime upon which to be exhausting ourselves. But if you can find meaning in the kind of running you have to do to stay on this team, chances are you'll be able to find meaning in another absurd pastime, life. Without limits, Bill Bowerman. Owens is filled with positive energy, and it overflows onto everyone he interacts with. With the daunting task of a running workout after a long day of school, I frequently found myself in a grumpy mood at the end of the school day. Despite my stubborn attitude, Owens always found a way to uplift my mood. He showed me how contagious happiness truly is, and how much better you can be with a good attitude. One smile is a catalyst for more positivity, and positivity is beneficial in every aspect of your life. It's the hardest thing in the world to believe in something. If you do, it's a miracle. Without limits, Steve Prefontaine. Owens cared about every athlete on the team. Before each meet, he talked strategy to everyone, no matter how talented they were. Lots of his personal time was spent reading coaching books, comparing running stats with the competition, planning unique workouts, etc. I would spend all day trying to plan the perfect racing strategy, and at practice, Owens would tell me his plan, which was always so much smarter and more beneficial than my own. However, he's unique to other coaches because he not only wants me to be a strong athlete, he also wants to be my friend. He cares about me as a person, not just an athlete. Owens doesn't ask you how you're doing just to ask, but because he honestly wants to know. He exemplified to me how to genuinely care what people are saying. In many ways, a race is analogous to life itself. Once it's over, it cannot be recreated. All that's left are impressions in the heart and in the mind, running with the Buffaloes. Cross country is over. With the conclusion of track season, Owens will never coach me again. However, even though I can never relive these incredible experiences, everything I learned and experienced from Mr. Owens will forever be imprinted on my heart and mind.
Courtney, thank you for those kind and very humbling words. I like to joke with her about how when she was in 8th grade, I would have random people come up to me and just say, hey, there's this 8th grader at the junior high that's like a prodigy and she's really good. And when you have enough random people come up to you and tell you that, you start to think to yourself, wow, I better not screw it up. So I don't think I did. I think Courtney had a very successful and enjoyable career at Speedway Cross Country. But going off that, when she came in, yes, she had the talent, but something that I quickly noticed about Courtney was her hard work and her dedication and her passion to be successful at something. And when I saw that, it motivated me to be the best coach I possibly can. Because when you have an athlete or a student like Courtney and Merrill, as an educator, as a coach, you have a responsibility to do the best job you can and provide the best experience and the best opportunity for those student athletes to become a better student, a better athlete, and a better person. And in the process, I became a better coach, a better person, and a better educator. So thank you for that, Courtney. Also, I would like to thank Misty for putting on such a wonderful event tonight. As well, thank you for the school board and administration for putting on this wonderful opportunity for us. And then lastly, I'd like to thank my wife, Samantha. Without her taking care of the little one at home, I would not be able to stay at track meets late at night or miss every Saturday in the fall. So thank you, everybody, and most importantly, thank you, Courtney, for everything.
Thank you, Courtney, for those inspirational words. And thank you, Mr. Owens, for all you do for our students. Next, we have number 9 in her class, Miss Anna Long. Anna will be attending Indiana University in the fall, studying education. And her honoree is Miss Whitney Baker, our freshman social studies teacher at the high school.
Throughout my high school career, I've had teachers share personal stories, words of wisdom, and end conversations with a simple reminder of why we were working so hard. Many of them reminded us of the big picture when certain days seemed like there wasn't one. Mr. Dorman's go-to line was leave a legacy. While I wasn't always sure how I'd leave my legacy, I was positive I could find someone that embodied everything I wanted to stand for, a mentor. Little did I know the impact my mentor would have on my high school career and life going forward. She is the person I go to with good or bad news when I need advice and when I need a friend. With that being said, I'm humbled to stand here today and have the privilege to honor my role model, Mrs. Whitney Baker. Being new to a school can be hard, but especially during the awkward stages of freshman year. My fears as being part of a new student in a bigger school than I was used to included the fear of getting lost. This wasn't necessarily in the 4 main halls of the school, but in the mix of the kids, the work, and not knowing what to expect next. This fear quickly ended the minute I met Mrs. Baker. Where many students and teachers kept on with their business like normal, Mrs. Baker went out of her way to make sure I was doing well with the change. Her class is what I looked forward to every day. There was a sense of familiarity and comfort, but not so much that it limited us. Within the few first weeks, I found that there was many unique character traits that made her a beyond remarkable person. The first I noticed in my freshman volleyball season at Speedway. Mrs. Baker coached volleyball at the time, which happened to be my favorite and only sport. It wasn't her ability to play or her talent that I was drawn to, but rather her ability to lead with positivity and respect. Her optimistic attitude and ability to hold the team to a high standard on and off the court was unlike any other. Her daily encouragement and sense of humor made the long season worth it. Every day she came into our practices ready to help us improve in any way we could. There was never a time I could remember her coming in without a smile and dedication to push us as players. Although she wanted us to take our practices and games seriously, she often reminded us that this was supposed to be fun, and therefore we should treat it as such. I truly believe a special and highly valued portion of the program was lost when she stepped down. The next key trait of Mrs. Baker is her devotion to God.
She is the teacher representative of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which I soon became a member of freshman year. She has never tried to cover it or sugarcoat the struggles of keeping the faith during our private conversations. Her willingness to be open and lead by example has set a high standard for the students to be held to. Mrs. Baker's kindness, patience, and faithfulness has transpired into every aspect of her life. Another distinctive characteristic about Mrs. Baker is that she genuinely cares. This applies to all of her students, athletes, colleagues, and the school. Improving the school and its culture is one of Mrs. Baker's biggest passions. She has led student council all of my high school career. Every year, she dedicates herself to finding new ways to get more students involved and connected, even if that means sacrificing her own time and money. In addition, she took on the role of being in charge of the freshman mentor program and do for all of them what she did for me. Mrs. Baker has changed this school in too many ways to count. She has been the biggest advocate for students and their voices. She takes the time to hear them and actually make them feel heard. I do not regret signing up for any of the programs that she has led. In fact, there are many nights I wish we could do again. The most obvious quality of Mrs. Baker is her love for teaching. She truly understands that teaching goes beyond the classroom. Mrs. Baker's love for traveling and understanding world cultures brings a whole new insight to her world geography class. She brings her own experience into the daily conversations and lessons, which makes it easier for the students to understand. She creates a desire within the students to actually be engaged in what's happening around the world and learn how it affects them. Mrs. Baker understands that education goes beyond the four walls of the classroom. She doesn't only teach to have respect for other cultures and people of different backgrounds, but she also teaches you to have respect for your peers, authorities, and even yourself. She does so much more than teach the curriculum and prepare you for the test. Speedway is beyond blessed to have her as an educator and influencer for their students. I could keep going, but I'm pretty sure the list of ways Mrs. Baker has impacted the community would never end. I know that I would not be as involved or who I am without her guidance. I truly cannot begin to put into words an explanation that will do you justice. Thank you, Mrs. Baker, for everything you have done for me and for Speedway. I will sincerely miss the time I got to spend under your guidance, all of our discussions and memories, the impromptu singing and dancing, and everything that makes you who you are.
I'm not going to really be able to be up here long because I might not hold it together. But I'm truly honored to be represented by her, and I'm just honored to be part of this community and to just be standing amongst these wonderful people is just such an honor. I apologize, I'm crying. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Speedway. I'll miss you.
Thank you, Anna, for those kind words, and thank you, Ms. Baker. Next, at number 8 in her class, we have Melanie Wall. Melanie will attend Ohio University in the fall, studying music therapy. And her honoree, Miss Amy Cronin, band instructor from Speedway Junior High.
I don't know how I'll be able to keep it together either now that Ms. Baker and Anna have been up here, but I'll do my best. I would definitely consider myself a normal teenage girl trying to find her way through life, just like everyone else. However, I have one predominant trait that anyone who even starts to get to know me will see. I simply love music. I like to play it, sing it, hear it, and most of all, learn it. This fall, I will begin to pursue a degree in music therapy at Ohio University. Music therapy is a new kind of therapy that uses situation-specific music to reach individual goals, whether it be to calm a newborn baby with its start to life, or to calm an elderly man in hospice care with his end to life. Many people listen to music everywhere, in the shower, before bed, at restaurants, and in movies. They don't even notice it or the effect it has on them, and I wouldn't have noticed it either if it weren't for Mrs. Cronin. Mrs. Cronin was my 7th and 8th grade band teacher, but we first met when I was a hesitant little 6th grader seeing instruments for the first time lined up on Wheeler Elementary's cafeteria tables. They were placed there by Mrs. Cronin in hopes that my class would sign up for band as their art elective in junior high. Without really knowing what I was getting into, I chose to play the flute, despite initially telling myself I was just going to do choir and get the art elective over with. But little did I know, Mrs. Cronin would change the path of my life forever the day she came to Wheeler. A few years from now, as I walk for my 2nd graduation, that one day organized by Mrs. Cronin will lead me to starting off my career in my life, and for that I can never thank Mrs. Cronin enough. Mrs. Cronin's class was the one class every music student looked really forward to. But let's be honest, that's mainly because I rarely had homework. At first, I was one of those kids that liked it for the lack of homework and groaned every time we did get an assignment. However, towards the last half of my 7th grade year, Mrs. Cronin introduced the band to this giant competition called Solo and Ensemble. She urged me to do it, and although I didn't want to at the time, the gold rating I got there changed something in me. I started thinking, wow, maybe I can really start to make something out of this. Mrs. Cronin's tiny push into the contest gave me a sense of value, both in myself and in music. Even though I could barely play one set of the fast 16th notes at the time, it showed me what music really was. It isn't just some band class without homework, it's a community where people come together to make art and show the emotions that they can't explain in words. Without Mrs. Cronin, I never would have figured that out. Any junior high band student will know exactly what a practice card is. Mrs. Cronin made her students practice 90 minutes every week and log it on a piece of paper that had to be signed by their parents for a grade. Most kids dreaded it, and at first I did too, since my parents made me not only practice 90 minutes every week, but 30 minutes every day. I thought this would be so impressive to Mrs. Cronin, but she never seemed satisfied. At the time, although this is not true at all, I thought maybe it was because she hated me or something. But she never wanted me to stop doing my best. She always urged me to do great things, and she saw a potential in me that no one else did, not even myself at the time. She wanted me to do my absolute best with music, not only for her or for my parents, but for myself. She taught me to be humble and to actually want to practice beyond her or my parents' expectations. Because she established this in me so early in my career, I was even able to get into Ohio University's School of Music. I would not have been able to do it without her help, or without her helping me create my own goals, and for that I am very grateful. As I said earlier, many kids took junior high band because it rarely had homework. Thus it became the class to blow off for some students. But the one thing I admire most about Mrs. Cronin is her willingness to put 100% of her effort into every student, even if that student didn't put the same amount of effort back into the class. Without Mrs. Cronin, I would not be nearly as happy as I am today. She established a solid base in music for me, starting with the day she came to Wheeler and continuing with the first day of the week-long flute camp the summer after 6th grade. Mrs. Cronin gave me a firm ground to grow on in music and always directed me where to go with it, while helping me set my own goals. She always believed in me and pushed me to do my best, and she taught me to stay humble about my passion. Every day, I worked to make Mrs. Cronin proud, and I'm so thankful that she was a part of my life. Thank you, Mrs. Cronin.
I am so thrilled and humbled to be here tonight. I've been here for 18 years, and this is the first time I've ever been invited to this, and I'm just absolutely thrilled. I look around the room tonight, and I see 7 out of the 10 of you were in my favorite 8th grade band ever. Sorry, Drew. Okay, all right. But just absolutely love all of you, and I'm so thrilled again. I know that this is such an honor because Speedway teachers are just the best of the best in the entire state, and to be here tonight is just absolutely amazing. Thank you, Melanie, and thank all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Ms. Cronin. Next we have at number 7, Miss Billy Jarrett. She plans on attending Franklin College in the fall, where she plans on studying applied mathematics. And her honoree, Miss Abby Houck, Speedway High School science teacher.
The first encounter I had with Mrs. Houck was about a month into my junior year after she had decided to take on all the chemistry classes in the school and, more specifically, my AP chemistry class. Mrs. Houck was honest with all of us from the very beginning. We were a month behind, and it was going to be a long, difficult journey. But Mrs. Houck also told us that we were in this together, and that no matter what, she was going to try her best to make sure we succeeded. Her confidence and passion to enlighten her students is unparalleled, and ever since that first day with Mrs. Houck as my teacher, I knew she'd have an impact on my life that would be beyond comparison. Every day, Mrs. Houck came to class radiant with energy and ready to teach. Even though it was her first year teaching advanced placement chemistry, she never gave up on herself or her students when things got harder. There were a lot of questions regarding theory, and if Mrs. Houck didn't know, she'd admit it and look it up, relentlessly researching until she could give the class a concrete answer. Mrs. Houck was unique. There was an unmatched level of dedication to her students that she possessed. Mrs. Houck attended AP trainings and joined AP chemistry groups, so she could guarantee she knew the content and could teach the material to her students, and all this was on her own free will. Mrs. Houck takes care of her students and their education much like a parent would with their kids. This is not just a job for her. She is so dedicated and considerate and truly wants to see all of her students succeed. Mrs. Houck has built my confidence immensely since meeting her. Chemistry is a difficult class, and after a while, it can surely get you down. Time after time, when I got discouraged, Mrs. Houck would never fail to reassure me and remind me how talented of a scholar I was. It's almost unheard of to get a failing grade on a test or quiz and get reassured rather than scolded. Mrs. Houck was understanding and never failed to remind me that grades do not define who I am as a person or scholar. She believed in me and inspired me to never give up until I am satisfied with myself, which has helped me greatly. She's someone I can honestly confide in no matter what, and I'm confident Mrs. Houck cares about me and my endeavors greatly. I will never take Mrs. Houck and all the time she's helped me and my well-being for granted. Even now, Mrs. Houck is one of the first people I go to when I need help, reassurance, or just to talk. She can always make me smile and feel better about any situation. Mrs. Houck always says hi to me when she sees me in the hallways, usually calling me one of my many nicknames she's made for me over the past 2 years, my favorite being Billert. And it's one of my favorite things about her. She always makes me feel noticed, and she's always pushed me to be the best version of myself. Earlier this year, I needed help with a scholarship. Mrs. Houck was so dedicated to helping me. She wrote me multiple heartfelt letters of recommendation, and for weeks she gave up her prep period to help me prepare for the interview. She makes me, and I imagine others, feel like a priority. Mrs. Houck is one of the most selfless teachers and people I know. She's always made me feel like a valued member of the school and community. Between the numerous private, heartfelt conversations we've had, those with laughter and those without, I've grown to love Mrs. Houck. Her caring attitude, motivational pep talks, and willingness to help students from all backgrounds is something I admire and appreciate greatly, more than I can put into words. Mrs. Houck has helped me to see my full potential, and without her, I honestly would not be where I am today. Mrs. Houck, thank you for always believing in me, no matter how much I doubted myself. Thank you for always going out of your way to check on myself and others. I will forever feel grateful for you and the impact you've had on my high school career.
It's true. I took over AP Chemistry last year, the 6th week of the school year. I had 0 training and 0 experience. When things got hard for the kids, I would buy them donuts in the morning. We're lucky we didn't end up with diabetes afterwards. We would listen to a lot of pop music. We really liked Taylor Swift. We would look for really good chemistry memes. When things got hard for me, I would find myself between my 2 middle school age daughters at the kitchen table, all of us collectively doing our own homework. Mine was solving released AP problems. Because I knew that Billy Jarrett was going to show up. She was going to show up before school. She was going to show up in the middle of the day during AC. She was going to boomerang out of Dorman's class 7th period, and she was going to have a question. And I was not going to be caught off guard. Billy is the total package. She is intelligence, she is motivation, she's athleticism, she's drive, all rolled into one. And while I'm very thankful for this honor tonight, I'm most looking forward to the future when I'll be able to look back and say that I knew Billy Jarrett when. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Mrs. Houck. Next, at number 6 in his class, Mr. Zachary Merrill. Zach plans on attending Greenville University in the fall, where he plans on studying biology. His honoree is the Mr. Derrick Dorman, Speedway High School English teacher.
Blessing in disguise. I would have been shocked if anyone had told me on the first day of my freshman year that Mr. Dorman would have been the most influential teacher of my high school career. 2 major characteristics of my life would qualify my presumption. The first being that English was not my strongest subject. Any of my peers can testify that my day-to-day grammar is sketchy at best, and I had been self-conscious about my writing skills for a while. So my first high school English teacher would not be my number one prediction of a teacher that I would remember with fondness. The second lump of uncertainty towards him was my future playing tennis. Mr. Riley, a former geometry teacher and tennis coach, had invited me to practice with the high school team while I was in middle school, and I became comfortable with his coaching and the future he seemed to represent. However, Mr. Riley took a new job at a new school, and Mr. Dorman, a former college tennis player, stepped into the coaching role. Since the boys' tennis season starts in the fall, my first major experience with Mr. Dorman was as one of his tennis players. My initial timidity towards the season was shattered as the first practice continued. His laid-back yet dedicated approach to coaching demanded respect and hustle, but it also left room to fail and improve. Unfortunately, the opportunity he presented to me was not recognized by youthful Zach Merrill. As a freshman, I expected success to be given to me, so my attitude towards competition, my coaches, and teammates was filled with arrogance and immaturity. Basically, my outlook towards athletics was next to unacceptable. Luckily, Mr. Dorman's patience helped me, and probably himself, get through that first season as a learning curve on what it means to live at the next level. The classroom had a different feel as a student of his and not a player. My introverted nature and lack of confidence in English led me to, thank goodness, have an open and humble approach. The image I created for myself of what the class entailed was constant writing and reading, with the harsh standard for grammar and syntax, but his class couldn't have been any more different. His ability to relate to his freshman students with the daily activity of playing a song and having us complete a short response again shattered expectations, and his spirited readings of text created a learning environment that was similar to the tennis court. Fortunately, this time his students' behavior was not an issue. Now, so far I've described Mr. Dorman as a patient, laid-back, and accepting person, but I don't want to paint the picture of an authority figure that could not keep discipline on a team or in a classroom. While he was consistently friendly and forgiving, he always demanded respect and would never tolerate a lack of effort or a load of excuses. This lesson was shown subtly in the classroom. His class was the first to set the standard of getting something done well instead of simply getting something done, specifically in regard to the quarter-long project all freshmen did that was about a person who affects other people, which I now find very fitting. However, it was on the tennis court that his tough love really had the opportunity to shine through. My constant griping was not received with acceptance, and he ultimately pushed me to control what I could control. The bottom line was, I was going to be given opportunities to shine, and I could take it or leave it. Mr. Dorman had set me up as a freshman with the opportunity to thrive in the classroom and on the tennis court, and after freshman year, it seemed like the only chance I had to learn from his wisdom would be the 2 months of the tennis season each year. However, I had forgotten who Mr. Dorman truly was, and I quickly learned that 2 months of coaching wasn't enough for Mr. Dorman. He set up my teammates and I to hit with his tennis buddies during the winter and coordinated a membership and lessons at a health club with tennis courts so I could improve in the off-season. Throughout my next 3 years at the high school, my game continued to improve as he strained his 6'6" plus frame to help any of his players work and progress. He never held himself to a limit when helping any of his kids. Throughout my high school career, Mr. Dorman had been the epitome of character. He is a genuine role model who was able to guide and support an uncomfortable and ignorant freshman that didn't know the first thing about diligence or perseverance to 2 sectional victories and a trip to this dinner. He had 2 types of challenges while mentoring the same person, a bashful student who was scared to learn in the classroom and a callow athlete who refused to learn on the court. While I still aspire to be the stud he calls himself, Any athletic, academic, or intellectual growth I have accomplished over my high school career can somehow be tied to him. Considering everything he has taught me in and out of the classroom, it has been an inexplicable privilege to have Mr. Dorman as my leader throughout high school.
Okay, bear with me, Miss Davenport. You can time me. I'm going to hit your time window, but actually tonight I felt compelled to put a few comments down, so you got to stick with me. The word key contains multiple definitions. It's a device, gives people access. Can be defined as an essential element towards achieving a goal. Could be used as a word describing a solution. Webster even asserts that key means quintessential. And whenever I think about Zach, I think about keys. Bear with me. Zach's possessed a lot of keys. Mr. Hull, I'm guilty. He has a key to the tennis shed. If that violates company policy, I'll get slapped down later. From time to time, Zach and the other members of Team Merrill have possessed the keys to my house because they've graciously taken care of my home multiple times, and in particular, my beagle, Rosie. And throughout his life, I'm fairly confident he's been provided tremendous foundational keys from his loving family. Now, it is true, as a freshman in my pre-AP English 9 class, he was consistently a superior academically performing student, and that was a fundamental reason why Period 2 considered themselves to be the alpha dog. Jen and Courtney, you can debate the merits of that comment if you want later. He's been a musical leader throughout his participation in the music department. He leaves our Speedway boys tennis program as perhaps the most prolific player in school history. 2-time state tournament qualifier in singles. And our improvement each of the 4 years in our program is directly because of him. Fundamental, key. Now, what's the basic element of all this? What's the recipe? Zach's a key member of this class of 2019. And somebody who mentioned creating a legacy. Anna Long, yes. Yes, that I harped on that with this group to death because this group has created a legacy our community should be very proud of. And Zach, the key to this success of this legacy in this community are students like Zach. I want to thank you for being a quintessential member of our Speedway community, and like many others are going to mention tonight, we look so forward to seeing what you're going to do in the future. Thank you very much.
Zach, I don't think you have to doubt your writing skills anymore. Great job. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dorman. Next up, we have number 5 in his class, Mr. Andy Castillo-Mauricio. Andy will be attending IUPUI in the fall to study computer science. His honoree is Miss Jennifer Warren, teacher at Wheeler Elementary.
As I walk into Wheeler Elementary as a 5-year-old excited on his first day of school, boy, was I in for a surprise. Nobody but me or 2 other students spoke Spanish. It was very difficult and intimidating going to school every day, not being able to write, speak, or understand any English. But I'm very thankful I was part of the Speedway school system. It is truly a blessing growing up in Speedway because every teacher and every staff member does everything in his or her power to keep everyone safe and make it their goal for students to excel academically and shape them into good individuals. Someone that's always been by my side to help me in my struggle to become proficient in English and to succeed in school was Ms. Warren. I honestly don't think I would be here if it wasn't for her dedication and passion for helping students and anyone in general. She was always someone that I counted on if I ever needed help. She wouldn't even spend time at school by being at the Speedway Public Library to help me and many other students with homework. I don't think I ever missed a help session with Ms. Warren, And I promise it wasn't just for the snacks. Let me all tell you something. You knew it was going to be a good day when she brought in some of her famous cookies. Not too long ago, our soccer team had a cookout, and she made some soccer ball-shaped cookies for us. To be honest, I can't tell you how many I ate or brought home that day, so my family could supposedly try them. Let's just say they made it home safely, in my stomach. Now as I look back and reflect, I'm very thankful that you never gave up on me. I'm thankful you were patient with me and always encouraged me to continue to do better. You always preach that practice makes perfect, and that has always stayed with me throughout everything I do in life. I recall struggling to read and found it difficult to keep up with guided reading levels. But you made sure I stayed motivated and on track. As much as I dreaded reading, Ms. Warren always assured me that there was a book out there that would keep me entertained. I was such a naive kid because I believed every book was boring. But Ms. Warren always found a book that would keep me both quiet and grab my attention. I'm very thankful for crossing paths with such a wonderful and passionate person who helps students every day. You taught me many lessons that I've carried on with me throughout my academic career, and as a senior about to graduate, I thank you, Ms. Warren.
Andy, I am honored. I left Speedway 8 years ago to pursue a different route. I'm still teaching, but little kids now. And I truly am honored that you were touched and that I was able to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Next, at number 4 in her class, we have Emily Wachter. Emily plans on attending Cedarville University in the fall to study molecular biology. Her honoree is Mr. Tim Kurtz, Speedway High School science teacher.
My biggest fan. Of all the teachers, peers, friends, and family members who have influenced me during my high school career, Mr. Kurtz has been the most influential one. He's humbled me enough to understand that I am never going to be the smartest person in any room. And he's exalted me enough to believe that I can always learn more and I can always get better. Most of all, he's taught me that intelligence and kindness are equally valuable and that life ought to be lived to the fullest. What makes Mr. Kurtz such an influential person in my life is that not only is he a very intelligent person, but he also encourages me to be just as intelligent. He does this through example, by demonstrating just how useful and necessary it is to be intellectually sound, and through inclusion, imparting his knowledge to the class as an equal rather than a superior. Mr. Kurtz indulges each and every one of my questions to the best of his ability, no matter how obscure. And he doesn't value just intelligence, but applied intelligence, or wisdom. He would tell you that good ideas with bad planning just turn out to be bad ideas. I appreciate the fact that he understands the importance of applying intelligence rather than simply getting good test grades or making a lot of money. Mr. Kurtz has taught me that my ability to take a test, to mindlessly spit out the answers that have been drilled into me by teachers, means nothing in comparison to my ability to communicate and understand ideas and concepts to and from those around me. Another way that Kurtz has inspired me to reach my full potential is by encouraging me to be kind. As a very logical and practical individual, it might seem counterintuitive for me to be as devoted to Christianity as I am, but Mr. Kurtz understands it perfectly. See, it all comes down to the golden rule, treating others the way you want to be treated. If you expect your neighbor to treat you a certain way, then you ought to treat them the same way. The same applies in all areas of life. If you aspire to be something, then you ought to extend the same opportunity to be something to others. This logical sense of empathy towards others is something that Mr. Kurtz and I share, which makes his teaching more impactful for me as it resounds in my heart as well as my head. I've witnessed another way in which his beliefs parallel with my own in his many exhortations about taking responsibility for one's own choices, actions, and life. He passionately pleads with apathetic teenagers on a daily basis, warning them that if they don't act now, their futures will be ripped out from under them, because whether they realize it or not, their actions have consequences that they will eventually have to face. Mr. Kurtz has reinforced in my mind the importance of realizing the significance of every choice I make, especially that of my education. I have learned to take each day in stride, doing my very best at every opportunity, and taking charge of my own education so that I have no reason to be ashamed or have regrets. Most importantly, Mr. Kurtz has encouraged me to live my life unabashedly happy, to enjoy every moment. Every morning when I walk into his room, I make a conscious effort to try to make him smile and let him know that I genuinely care about him because I know that he has given me countless reasons to smile. Some of his more unique turns of phrase include can't swing a dead cat without hitting, the terms bailiwick and humdinger, and I do believe he once said blackberries were the devil's food. These few examples demonstrate his charismatic personality and sarcastic humor that perfectly matches my own. I never leave class without laughing at least once from one of his fantastic tales from his past. Those beloved memories for him are the future dreams I have because Mr. Kurtz's full life inspires me to live a full life of my own. Even if Kurtz wasn't all of these things and more, he would still be the most influential person from my high school career simply because he believes in me, wholeheartedly and emphatically. He's always seen my potential, and he wouldn't let me cower before it because he knew that what he saw in me was genuine and powerful. I am his biggest fan because he's always been mine. I don't think I would be the student I am today without his faithful support of me every step of the way. Mr. Kurtz, you have so inspired me that I truly hope that I can one day fill your enormous shoes and be able to have the same foundational impact on another person that you have had on me. Thank you.
Hey, Dorman. See, like Dr. Trebley just starts sweating, just right there. What a tremendous young lady. Now, I have to step away from the microphone for just a second because there's just been a common thread that probably since maybe the second week. And it goes something like this. Wachter! Because I blamed her, and with my accomplice, Zach, many times we blamed her for everything from choice of where the class went wrong, choice of her reading materials, you name it. Wachter she was always the one that I could count on. Honestly, until last year, I didn't know her name was Emily. For the longest time, it was, and it felt funny when I said it. I'd be like, yeah, Wachter, get up here. So she is just a joy to be around, and she's one that makes you want to come to work every day. According to, you've got a lot of them here. And I would have to say you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a good kid here. So I would give that. But I have two quotes, one of which that talks about her passion. Holy cow, I need a spit guard here. One talks about her passion for learning, which says, to the intelligent man or woman, life appears infinitely mysterious, but the stupid have an answer for every question. And that would be one that, with her continuance of always asking questions and always pushing me. And a lot of those, I have to frankly say, I made up the answers to, but most of them, they sounded good. So Emily, to this, I make this wish to you. From one of my favorite, we're both avid readers. She tends to read a little different genre than I do, but we'll not worry about that. And this is from Edward Abbey. It says, may your trails be crooked, winding, lonesome, dangerous, leading to the most amazing view. May your mountains rise into and above the clouds. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ms. Kurtz. Next, at number 3 in her class, we have Josie Fry. Josie plans on attending Indiana University in the fall to study environmental science. Her honoree is Miss Katie Connelly Bush, elementary teacher at Fisher.
My 5th grade teacher has been the most influential educator in my life. Her teaching style and her ability to believe in every single student who entered her classroom changed the course of my life forever. When she originally became my teacher, I had reached a point of academic depression. My grades weren't thriving, and the notion that I could excel at something was completely foreign. I was a subpar student that most others had written off as an unintelligent kid. I don't know how many times I heard, "That's just the best you can do," when B's or C's would come back on my report card. I didn't have social skills or friends, and it was difficult to succeed in the traditional scholastic environment that didn't support my success. Everything changed when I was invited into the 5th and 6th grade academy. Mrs. Connelly gave me a chance. She didn't see me as a below-average student. She saw me as a kid that just needed some help. This extraordinary teacher set me on a path to academic success through a genuine belief in every student that walked into her classroom. With Mrs. Connelly, I had a teacher who believed in me, an educator who was willing to challenge me, and I had a friend. In Miss Connelly's classroom, there wasn't one way to learn and there wasn't a limit. There wasn't anything I wasn't capable of with hard work and determination. Convincing me that I was capable was one of the most powerful things an educator has ever done. With Mrs. Connelly, I began to flourish personally and academically. Under her tutelage, I was confident enough to express myself. If I was confused, I could reach out. If I had a question, she answered it. And if she thought I was capable of more, she convinced me I was. She poured every ounce of her beautiful and encouraging spirit into her students. The most wonderful thing about Mrs. Connelly is her spunky personality. Seeing her able to express herself gave me the confidence to do the same. Without her, I would not be where I am today. I would have carried on with my faulty learning tactics throughout junior high and high school. I wouldn't have had the courage to come back and try again after I got a C on my first science test. I wouldn't be willing to ask for help after class, and I wouldn't be the athlete I am today. She taught me there was more to me than my first attempt. It was all the wonderful little things about Mrs. Connelly, her smile, her attitude, and her genuine consideration that made such a dramatic difference in my life. She's simply put, an astonishing person. I have a tremendous amount of admiration for Mrs. Connelly. It's clear that she's an amazing teacher for her 7 years after I last had her in class to still inspire me so much. The fact that she's here today is a representation of her kindness, how she can still make me smile is evidence of her joy, and how I can still learn from her is a testament to her teaching. She's truly a phenomenal person and the most influential educator in my life.
Thank you. It's really sweet. Got a little something for Josie here. All right, Josie, first of all, let me say congratulations on being one of the top 10 students in your class. This accomplishment is earned through hard work and dedication to your studies. I am honored that you let me be a part of this joyful moment of recognizing your excellence. In case you haven't met Josie before, let me tell you, you've been missing out, and you should take some time to get to know this wonderful person after this ceremony. She is a determined, strong-minded, kind, persistent, fierce, and smiley, loyal person. She always has that smile on her face. She's the kind of person we want to represent the town of Speedway. Josie was an absolute dream student when she was a part of my class in her 5th and 6th grade years. So back then, the Hunger Games book series was recently released, and I remember reading that book and thinking of the many parallels between Josie and the main character, Katniss's traits. Josie, like Katniss, has a quick wit and intense curiosity. She would hear a fairly basic lesson on figuring out what a word meant based on context, and she would almost create a collegiate level quest to figure out more about this topic. She delved into word study, sitting in a beanbag chair with a stack of books, a dictionary, a spiral where she avidly collected any word that piqued her interest, and she had the determination to learn more words and increase her vocabulary. She often would integrate these large words into the classroom discussion and expose her classmates to new vocabulary. While this intense, personally driven study may have subsided quickly in a typical elementary student, Josie avidly pursued improving her vocab throughout the years. She is, and certainly was back then, curious, and those are great traits.
and being a learner. The parallels between Katniss and Josie continue on with their mutual love of nature. You could see Josie exploring outdoors at recess, exploring trees, the clouds, and fearlessly encountering bugs. She saved her classmates from spiders several times. You, like Katniss, are truly fearless. I remember her having unique points of view in class debates, not being afraid to stand up for her beliefs, even if it was in a multi-age classroom where most of the students were older than her. She was and is brave and stands for something about which she cares with passion and logical argument. So actually, Josie, speaking of logical arguments, this is kind of an odd topic to bring up, but I'm going to do it. Do you remember writing a paper, a persuasive paper about chewing gum? Yeah. You remember? Yes, that's okay. So she changed my life. You ready for this? Okay. So she wrote this great paper on why people should stop chewing gum. And I was a pretty avid gum chewer at the time. I remember reading your persuasive essay, and this is like in 5th grade, y'all. She did a great job researching the connection between chewing gum and headaches. And guess who stopped chewing gum? And guess whose headaches started disappearing? Mine. So you literally changed my life. You don't always hear about students curing headaches. But you did, you cured headaches. So thank you. I know it's kind of odd, but I thought I'd share. Josie, you've had an impact on me. I look forward to seeing how you continue to impact those around you. You're intelligent, determined, bold, hardworking, tough as nails, inspirational, kind, a leader, and you're ready to change our world. You're Speedway's very own Katniss. Congratulations on graduating, being in the top 10, and being on your way to IU this fall to study environmental management. Thank you so much for this honor, and as the character Cinna from the Hunger Games would say, girl on fire, I'm betting on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. Thank you, Ms. Connelly Bush. Next, we have number 2 in her class, Ms. Jennifer Merrill. Jen plans on attending IUPUI in the fall to study psychology and neuroscience. Her honoree is Mr. Nick Beard, high school social studies teacher.
One morning, while helping me decide on my post-college plans, Mr. Beard explained his true passion in life, helping people. There's no better profession for him than teaching. He loves each student individually. He creates a familiar relationship with everyone, and he never turns people away. Last year, after 7th period psychology class, I had to almost compete with other students for the chance to talk to him, since many kids want to take advantage of his acceptance and communication. Whenever I won the race to talk after class, my original philosophical psych questions were bound to evolve into personal anecdotes and a conversation I wished could last longer. Even so, he still continues to spell my name with 2 N's. I first saw his impact on students when I met him through track, before I had him as a teacher. For his inquisitive self, he asked about my music tastes. However, I completely blanked and honestly made a fool of myself. Despite my initial embarrassment, I spent time with him and Maddie Moore during track practice. It was obvious how much she admired Mr. Beard, and her ease of sharing her life with him. Maddie had undoubtedly looked up to him as I do now. Mr. Beard tells us countless entertaining stories. His students probably know more about him than some of the other teachers. I'm consistently amazed how such a young individual has already had such a full life. Like him, I want to be daring and willing to live in the moment, rather than constantly looking forward. Mr. Beard exemplifies the importance of taking advantage of the present and relishing the small, seemingly unimportant events. Lots of his relatable tales even take place during high school. There are many amusing stories, including running away to the city dump as a child, or sprinting across college campus while being chased by a leprechaun. But one I remember recounts a time his sister brought her then-boyfriend to dinner with the family at a pizza place the Beards frequented. When the time came to order, I should say I didn't ask his permission before I shared the story, so. But, a pizza place the Beards frequented, and when the time came to order, Mr. Beard's dad posed the obvious question, "What do you want on your pizza?" It seems simple, but his dad's bluntly intimidating nature caused the unprepared guests to freeze. Continually the question was fired, but despite its uncomplicated nature, the boyfriend had no response. After a while of silent embarrassment, Mr. Beard's sister answered for her boyfriend and then brought him outside for a private conversation. After that pizza dinner, Mr. Beard never saw the boyfriend again. Another time, he explained to us the psychology concept of blindly trusting authority through a story from his childhood. He and his friends tested the limits of putting out-of-order signs on perfectly usable bathroom stalls. They started with just one stall, then progressed to the entire bathroom, and then even to multiple bathrooms. Eventually, there were no working men's restrooms in the entire school. Through sharing his life experiences, Mr. Beard makes learning applicable and relatable. He creates his own curriculum, his own notes, his own activities. All questions are welcome, encouraged, and answered thoughtfully and intelligently. I spent half of class periods discussing the details of socioeconomics or developmental psychology, topics that were not necessarily in the lesson plan, but he was never frustrated that the class was now a day behind schedule. These discussions may have seemed like debates from the outside, but both of us knew that we weren't arguing, but mutually seeking the right answer. The joy I discovered in his class prompted me to study AP Psychology on my own this past year. Although I felt capable of taking the AP Psych test last year after completing Mr. Beard's comprehensive non-AP version. Initially, I was worried my motivation would quickly deplete, but my enjoyment in his class carried with me as I studied by myself. When I mentioned my plans to complete AP Psych to Mr. Beard, in his typical fashion, he quickly offered to help in any way possible. This year, I am in Mr. Beard's classroom again for economics. It isn't quite the same as psychology, and we haven't had the opportunity to have as many of our after-class conversations, but he still never fails to make me feel special as an individual. I cherish his opinion, values, and goals for himself and for me. Thank you.
I'll say this, it's amazing what kids will listen to and not listen to when you teach in class sometimes. Jen is an amazing individual, and I did learn to spell her name with one N by making a mnemonic device, Jen with one N, Merrill. So psychology there. But Jen is an amazing person, and I knew Jen was going to be fun when she was in my 7th period psychology class, and I was talking about Kohlberg's stages of moral development. And she asked me this softball question, and I'd taught psych for 5 years, so I hit it out of the park. And I turned to face the board, and I saw this hand go back up, and it was Jen's. And she said, well, Mr. Beard, how do you know the difference between these stages? And so I told her the subtle nuances, and I turned to face the board again, and this hand went back up, and I turned, and it was Jen. She said, well, Mr. Beard, how did they come up with this experiment? How did they get this data? And I said, well, they had this question, they got these answers. And I turned to face the board one more time, and it was during that time her hand went back up, and I thought, okay, someone's paying attention. And Jen asked, well, Mr. Beard, where do morals come from? And that's when I knew that having Jen in class was going to be a lot of fun, because it was about that time that every other kid's hand shot up because they wanted to jump in on the conversation. And that is what is most unique about Jen, because Jen inspires others to get involved, and Jen inspires others to enjoy their education as much as she does. We would stay after class sometimes for an hour with other students talking about different social issues or different psych issues. I can remember missing an entire track practice because we were just sitting around talking about socioeconomic status and gun control and things of that nature. I'll never forget that. And as a teacher, it's unbelievable, but it was all inspired from Jen. And I will say this, Jen, as you go throughout life, there might be times of uncertainty and things of that nature. But you have someone in me who will always admire you and support you as the wonderful person you are. Thank you so much for making these last 2 years just so much fun, and you deserve everything to get out of life. Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Mr. Beard. Next, at number 1 in her class, we have Miss Elinor Campbell. Ellie plans on attending Taylor University in the fall, where she plans on studying political science and economics. Her honoree is Mr. David Todd, high school social studies teacher.
Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. As a young, naive high school student with far-fetched dreams of traveling the globe and making a difference in the lives of its people, this ideology, vocalized by Nelson Mandela, has always guided many of my decisions, or rather, justified them. The late nights poring over textbooks and worksheets and the accompanying stress and anxiety were just part of the long, laborious process of trying to better the world around me, or so I thought. Entering my senior year shouldering a hefty load of 6 AP courses, I mentally braced myself to endure dragging lectures and loads of essays, with the reward for my work being, naturally, the ability to change the world. However, upon being a pupil of Mr. David Todd, I learned that was not quite the case. While I can't remember my first interaction with Mr. Todd, I can explicitly recall, during the first week of school, being struck by his patience. As with all teachers, Mr. Todd's reputation preceded him, and walking into room 149 on the first day of school, I remember checking off my observations as they matched up with my set expectations. Busts of historical figures on the windowsill? Check. Paintings of Arizona deserts adorning the walls? Check. Desks permanently arranged in a kumbaya-esque circular form? Check. Teacher joining students in said circle and spilling entire life story before encouraging open debate over the most divisive political issues of the day? Definitely not check, as this unforeseen phenomenon wasn't even remotely on my list of expectations. I would soon come to find out that this pleasant surprise on the first day of school was very indicative of every other day spent in Mr. Todd's class, in the best possible way. Never before had any other teacher so patiently and successfully facilitated true, open discussion without butting in at the end of the hour with the quote-unquote right answer. I was amazed at how Mr. Todd's passion and vigor for exploring every facet of the United States political system spread not just to me with my fascination for the social sciences, but to the entire classroom, seemingly through osmosis. There were never too many questions for Mr. Todd to answer or too many political cartoons to chuckle at. In the midst of a monotonous school day filled with bell work, notes, and assignments, the environment Mr. Todd created, where voicing opinions and engaging in debate were not only encouraged but part of the curriculum, seemed like an oasis and easily became my favorite 50 minutes of every school day. Mr. Todd maintained his strong rapport with his students outside of the classroom as well. One day in October, as a senior captain of the girls' soccer team, I was earnestly inviting the school to attend the girls' soccer sectional game that night, as it had the potential to be my last, and the team needed all the hometown support it could get. Several of my friends and classmates promised they would be there. However, as game time approached, a steady drizzle of rain started, and no students were to be found in the stands. The team felt dejected and played like it too, until, as we retook the field after halftime, the sound of Mr. Todd's grisly laugh filled the air. There he was, sharing a laugh in the stands with the team parents as the rain poured. Even though our team ended up losing the game, Mr. Todd's act of dedication to his students intrigued me and encouraged me to seek him out before and after class to talk about my favorite politicians and speculate about the 2020 election. In exchange for sending Mr. Todd funny Saturday Night Live videos, or as he calls them, liberal propaganda, he would give me advice on proper curly hair maintenance and familiarize me with his favorite genres of music I would classify as chill hop and neo-psychedelic rock, not only expanding my repertoire of political terminology, but obviously essential developmental knowledge as well. In response to Nelson Mandela, yes, education is a powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. However, my time as a student under the instruction of Mr. Todd has taught me that there are alternative and perhaps more important ways to gather an understanding of the large world around us than paperwork, memorization, and recitation. Developing political and world views and becoming impassioned to further a cause or study a subject is not something that can be taught in a book or lecture, but rather experienced through raw discussion and exploration. I entered my senior year feeling uneasy, thinking of what my future would look like, from what university I would attend to what major I would pursue. I may have shown interest in studying political science for several years now, but the sharp, defined clarity of this desire arose from quite an easygoing, laid-back, floppy-haired source, Mr. David Todd.
Thank you very much. Thanks for those kind words. I was surprised to get the email a couple weeks ago that I was being invited to this dinner. I was like, what? I didn't expect this, so thank you. I just have a few words here. Congratulations on being the top scholar at Speedway High School. Your dedication and intellect have served you well. I promised myself I wouldn't cry. Ellie Campbell comes to class every day prepared and readily discusses all topics. She enjoys current political news and is a political monster. Ellie's thoughtfulness and work ethic allows her to argue with the best rehearsed conservative voice in the class. Ellie is attentive and mature and readily giggles with her friends when discussing current events or TV shows like The Bachelor. You're a true Renaissance American woman. I'm not sure how many Cory Booker bumper stickers she has or who she will vote for in the 2020 primaries. My hope is she does not scare too many students at Taylor University with her liberal agenda. Thanks for raising the academic bar in AP Government, and please remember to bring me some of those wonderful chocolate chip cookies before Christmas break. Your wisdom will influence and help others around you for the rest of your life. I am thankful you are part of AP Government class, and again, I am humbled to be chosen tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Mr. Todd. Just a couple days ago, I was interviewing a potential teacher candidate. And towards the end of that interview, I was asked, what is the greatest asset at Speedway? And without hesitation, I responded, our teachers. And I think the words that we heard here tonight reinforce that. And earlier, before we started, I said that we had wonderful students here at Speedway High School. After listening to the words that all 10 had written, how well they written those, and then how well they presented them here tonight, I think that speaks for itself. We truly do have amazing students, and in this room we have 10 of the best. I want to again congratulate tonight's seniors on this wonderful accomplishment, and again I say thank you to all those in attendance tonight who have helped them along their way. In the words of Les Brown, help others achieve their dreams, and you will achieve yours. That concludes our ceremony. At this time, I ask that all of the top 10 students and their honorees please make your way to the auditorium for pictures. For the rest of us, once the meal is ready, I will start making the way around the room and dismissing us one table at a time. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.